It's time. The D-Files Part 2 is here. This is the second in the series of stories written by Mr. Alan Ng, who is the editor-in-chief of Film Threat, emblazoned on the front page of Film Threat right now. The D-Files Part 2, The Great Mouse Reset. We're going to go over the story in just a second. I just first must complain to Alan, you need a different graphic. You can brand the story, just something slightly different graphic every time.
Okay.
You can tell them apart.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sure the writing is
there's a yeah, we've just started investigative journalism, and so there are things that kind of take a backseat, and clearly it's the header graphic image.
And to be clear how this started, if you're just catching up, Alan did a review of Disney's Wish, which is a movie that was released on the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. That is, in Alan's words, I'm quoting Alan Ng, the worst animated Disney film ever made.
In Disney's history.
In Disney's history. And after that comment went around and Alan's review was passed around between animators, which then evolved into a discussion where animators were reaching out to both Alan and I about the rot at Disney, the activist rot that is destroying the company through overt messaging, through just the decline in quality and a literal overthrow of the veteran talent at the company. This is part 2 of the story. Would you like to read it, Alan, or should I?
Why don't you read it since you're controlling it there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start. And we're not going to read the whole thing, but we will put a link in the description to the story. And here we go. As exposed in part 1 of the D-Files, the removal of John Lasseter was never about removing a, quote, bad man. But more that his personal demons were used as an excuse/weapon to remove him from creative power at the Walt Disney Company. The next step should have been to replace Lasseter with someone equally talented as him. Instead, the sinister forces within Disney saw his firing as a chance to initiate Disney's Great Reset. So there you go. My apologies for all the ads. It's how we pay the people. So I'm going to scroll past them as quickly as I can. It was October 2018, and Lasseter's last Disney film, Raya and the Last Dragon, was still in the early stages of development and storyboarding. His fingerprints were all over this project. The initial directors were Paul Briggs and Dean Wellens, with Adele Lim coming off her success with Crazy Rich Asians as the sole writer. Unfortunately, this trio was seen as being Lasseter people. Briggs and Wellens needed to go as they didn't fit the correct demographic, or maybe they were Lasseter loyalists, to tell Raya's story properly. Rumor has it that Lee was gunning for Briggs and Wellens by foisting impossible tasks on them to either get them fired, or better yet, force them to quit. Being the veteran talent that they were, the traps didn't work. Briggs was demoted to co-director, and Wellens was given a Disney Plus series to direct. Disney did have a diversity problem within animation, prompting Jennifer Lee to recruit new talent from the outside. Lee brought in Carlos Lopez Estrada to direct. The Mexican-American, not Southeast Asian director, was coming off his DGA nomination for his first feature, Blind Spotting. Before that, Estrada was an experimental theater director who worked his way into directing music videos and commercials.
Yeah. So they brought in an inexperienced talent who was a known name at that time for Blind Spotting.
Estrada was the emerging director needed to bring a fresh perspective to Disney animation. The problem is that directing animation is different from directing live action features. His inexperience quickly showed, and veteran director Don Hall was brought in to give the fresh face on the job training. Raya and the Last Dragon was Estrada's first and last Disney project, as he would return to directing music videos. The other curious move by Jennifer Lee had to do with writer Adele Lim. I'm just speculating here, but was Lim now being targeted by Lee because she was a Lasseter hire? What was the reason for bringing in a second writer? Lim was now forced to share writer credit with Lee's new recruit, Q Wen. I got that right. Whose credits to this point were a handful of television episodes as a writer, but mostly staff writer credits. The addition of Wen begs the question, why would Lim, coming off a $239 million success with Crazy Rich Asians, need to share a writing credit and paycheck with a relatively inexperienced TV writer? In my humble opinion, Disney decided to take a talented and studio-proven Asian woman and reduce her to a mere diversity hire. After Raya and the Last Dragon, Lim left Disney to write and direct her feature films, including Joyride. Her co-writer, Kui Wen, went on to direct and co-write the 2022 Disney flop Strange World. And this is under the heading Women in Animation. From here, Raya and the Last Dragon turned from a traditional Disney animated production to slowly transforming into Disney's first DEI test case. Step one was to load the entire project with female South Asian animators and talent from within the company. Then female Asian animators, then female POC animators, and the rest. But that wasn't enough. Rather than pull in other artists from within, a major recruitment push was made to hire more women from outside the company to reach a 50-50 male-female balance for equity's sake. A concerted effort was made to think outside the box, recruiting at Disney. During the female leads filmmaker panel for Raya.
So you could skip to the next paragraph, but the important thing was there was that Disney had to move outside the box.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, go to that. Disney Animation did go out.
Disney Animation did go out of its norms in hiring with the help of WIA, Women in Animation, an advocacy group created in 1993. Their mission states, we envision a world in which people of all gender identities share fully in the creation, production, and rewards of animation. With Raya and the Last Dragon, that aggressive push for gender equity and to radically transform an industry starts now. Sources tell us that with Raya and the Last Dragon, the goal wasn't to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion into the existing community of Disney animators, but to replace it with a radicalized group of female activists completely. One female POC animator contacted us about her experience with WIA to further her career in animation. She was looking for mentorship and resources to break into the industry. While initial discussions were cordial, she was quickly ghosted by the organization because she did not live in Los Angeles and could not be helpful to their cause. So there you go. Our source also told us that once she expressed concerns about the mission of WIA, she found herself blacklisted from the industry, a prevalent story we've heard, and felt that WIA and similar organizations had become the gatekeepers for women to enter animation. It's not enough as an animator to be a talented female person of color. You have to be WIA approved and toe the line. Does that mean about, I know what you mean by this. Another example of this new activist culture is the formation of a segregated women's committee that meets regularly to pitch ideas, network, vent, look at story room strategies, listen to guest speakers, and empower each other to take on leadership roles. Many of these sessions are sponsored by WIA and strictly for female identifying and non-binary people. Can you imagine going into a creative meeting knowing that half the room has already made all the decisions beforehand? These meetings are literal war rooms, as so-called creative sessions are now considered battlefields. Now imagine if you disagreed with one of their ideas. Shots fired. I'm sure there's a large bag of ists nearby to hurl your way.
Yeah, we could probably end there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's more to the article. In this, it's sort of broken up into three parts. It's supposed to be in italics at the end.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a Disney cast member, particularly in animation, who has been walking on eggshells, please, eggshells is capital. Why is eggshells capital?
This was a last minute ad, and
please reach out to us on or off the record. We want to tell your story. Contact us here. Well, there you go. You can finish reading the article. What I want to know is, Alan, what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? Yeah. It's all pretty much there. This right here just sets the stage that equality used to be the goal at in every industry, in these, culturally white dominated industries. And as the minority populations of America grew, it was time to bring in people of color. Minorities. I hate that color. Minorities is the word I tend to use. And it was, being able to train, to mentor, and to get people up to speed as to how to do things well. But now it's become a political movement where it's not so much, people wanting to tell their stories or wanting to show their artistic talents. It now becomes this movement to run things, and we're going to show later on in further parts of the D files that basically this idea of basically infiltrating the animation industry is pretty much a cancer that has not only spread within animation, but within practically every other department at Disney. And you see the results of it. Like cancer, the company is slowly dying. And and this is just the sad thing. And the reality is there are women who are talented artists. There were women who are working at Disney at that time who could have been easily promoted, easily brought in. And what happened was basically, if you read a little more into the details of the article, they started loading up Raya with all these female animators, a lot of them untested, untrained, and they all floundered. And because the veteran talents were also trying to work on this project, there was no mentorship. And heaven forbid you should allow one of the male veteran animators mentor the new talent. And this is the beginnings of the mess you're finding that Disney find itself in.
Yeah, it's it's going to contain. I think this could evolve potentially into a book for you, Alan. At some point, we'll talk about that offline. But I see this running at least the next couple months, just to bring us up to present day. And I'm just surprised there's not more of an industry reaction. I know there is in the animation community. There's a reaction to all of this, but when it comes to the mainstream trade publications, they virtually ignored the ill effects of DEI. We're seeing it in other parts, though. We're seeing
the WGA article we're running reflects this as well.
Right. Well, and we'll get more into that, but now there are other industries that are being affected where, it's one thing. Hey, a bad movie. Okay, fine. A bad movie, our entertainment going away. Okay, we'll survive that. We'll just look for other things. My two favorite movies of the last 2 years were not American films. RRR last year, well, previous 2 years ago, and last year, Godzilla -1. So I guess we look for entertainment other places, but it's really disconcerting when you see industries, for example, like the airline industry, the food industry. There's almost like post-pandemic, there's been sort of a general decline in the quality of almost everything across the board. So the service industry for sure. It's just, I don't know, maybe I never noticed it because it's just like, you generally good customer service. Now it's just in everything. It's really in everything. And so we shouldn't be surprised that this on these progressive companies that have leaned heavily into this, that it should affect the final product. I think this is more the focus of the WGA article, which is still on the obvious. It's all still on the website, it's archive all our stories, but that really exposed that there was a change in thinking of even what kinds of projects got developed. We will be doing a follow-up to the WGA story where we just got an email from a guy, this is like 2 days ago, who said that in development across TV and film, there's a phrase that they use called "male and pale is stale." That is a real thing that people who work in entertainment say. How is that not just straight up racist?
Yeah. Because it completely disregards talent. It completely disregards a working model. The fact that phases 1 and 2 phases 1 through 3 of the MCU was basically excellence and quality, and and heaven forbid you should repeat that. And now we're moving into this DEI realm, where I don't know. There's this belief that I go to my daughter and say, "Hey, there's Asians in this movie. We need to see it because it's going to be great." You'll see yourself in that story, and realize that as much as we'd like to see Asians represented in films, they're not being placed in very good stories. And we go back to the white ones.
Well, I'll just say, I'll say this. I think there's a very bad idea that has been pushed that people need to push back against. And that is this, that you need to see, it's a narcissistic view of the world. I need to see myself in this movie. No, you don't. If you tell a good story, you will identify with the story of the protagonist in a movie, regardless of what you look like. And the entire point of all fiction, whether it is a movie, a video game, a book, is that you see yourself in the lead character. The lead character might be a pig in Charlotte's Web, might be not even a human or a cartoon character. It doesn't matter. This idea, which has been pushed mainly in colleges, that you need to see yourself. You actually don't need to see yourself. You can identify with a protagonist that doesn't look like you. It's an opportunity to learn empathy. That's the point of all storytelling, is to in yourself build an empathy for someone who does not look like you. And we'll end it there. Part 3 of the D-Files will be coming in the next week or so.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, I have some stories about just the environment that this has created. This idea that you're constantly walking on eggshells. That if you don't watch what you say, if you don't watch, if you're constantly censoring yourself, that you're going to get shipped off to HR. We have a few stories, but if you've experienced this at Disney, please reach out to us. We'd love to get you in on this.
Question for Alan. Ready, Alan?
Yes. Okay, I have a good answer for this one now.
Where did the ousted animators go after Disney went fully woke? Went full woke?
Yeah. So the sound that from let's see, the best way to say it is that animation, to be an animator for a lot of people was a dream. To work for Disney, it was a dream. For working in the industry as an animator for artists was the dream. And the problem now is that the environment at not only Disney but at the others has gotten so toxic that the dream has become soured. And I will tell you, the vast majority of people realize this and won't go in the industry, and a lot of the veterans have decided to retire. A while ago, there were some Disney veteran animators that I mentioned, and while I was wrong in my assumptions about why they left, my feeling is that they may have seen the writing on the wall as to the direction of this industry, and decide to cash out and leave and live a relatively stress-free life. This is the sad thing, because as young people who want to become artists, they spend their lives learning about art. And then when they finally get into an industry that allows them to do what they do, they find out it's a toxic environment, and that they're more concerned about their jobs than they are about the art they're creating. And again, this is not just animation. This happens everywhere. I can tell you, teaching is the same way. Education. How many people do I know who wanted to go into the noble profession of teaching, and then once they got there, experienced the bullying of administrators and this attitude that actually educating our children is not the priority. It's maintaining the strength and power of its union. That drove a lot of my friends out of education, where they could have been, they were good people. I'm pretty sure that they would have loved to have shaped and molded the minds of the young people, of our children, and they gave up on that dream. And think about all the other people that they're who go into these industries with dreams and then have them soured. And this is the sad state of where entertainment is today.
Thomas Pickett back again for 5. Activists never create anything. They get put in positions of power and then destroy the business. I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. I don't think there's the thing is this, like when you see so much of this stuff, it's like, well, what did you create? If it's like an antagonist art movement of being anti a thing, but once the anti thing is gone and you've destroyed it, what can you create in its place?
Yeah. Well,
what are you going to create?
Yeah, it was brought up in the WGA letter. There were young writers who, after 2 years, were frustrated that they weren't showrunners yet. 2 years, which tells me is that they were more concerned about running a TV show than they were about writing a TV show. It was kind of like, it's that feeling of, hey, I put my 2 years in of doing this stupid writing thing. Now put me in charge, which tells me they're not really writers.
Ramina Jones, good to see you here. In my work, I had a male mentor who was excellent and really started me off well. Imagine if I were to reject him for being a white man. Well, that is what is being taught here. It's very anti-white male. I mean, frankly, I haven't gone to Sundance since 2018. I don't feel I'm welcome there. I never thought I'd even say those words. Sundance has always been diverse, but now it's against a certain type of person. Never saw that one coming. And it feels weird that it feels weird that now we're at a place where, like, I'm sitting here going, like, I wonder if someone will dislike me based on who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird how they've just replaced old racism with new. I thought in the 90s we were like getting to a place where it's like, yay, we're colorblind. Isn't that what we've been trying to do for decades? Yeah. And all of that change.
Colorblind is a racist term now.
F that. I that's the thing is I don't get this whole, I just don't understand this thinking.
Well, it's the whole acknowledge my race, but don't acknowledge my race.
It's a bunch of rules that, from what I can see, are all being made up on the fly just to make you wrong. Whatever it is, I'm making up the rules. You're wrong about everything.
Yeah. Well, I've always said equality today is now about revenge. Now that we're getting close to being equal, it's time for you to step aside, and let us take over. And that's exactly what's happening at Disney here. I've some of the people who reached out basically said that they're on a holding pattern at Disney, that they're not being allowed, that they're not being brought on to new projects. And then when they finally do get on a new project, when they go down the list of scenes to do, of course, they're pushed down to the more mundane, boring scenes. These people with decades of talent are now doing background work because somehow only women and women of the color of the characters on the scene can animate those and get the true reactions, the true movements of those people.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, I'd seen that.
Walt Disney had gotten it wrong for 100 years.
I mean, if anything, anyone that's an animator understands that part of animation is acting. If you've ever been to an animation studio, and I've been to several, they all have mirrors.
Yeah. Because
they're doing expressions, hand movements. They use their own face. It's acting.
Yeah.
The idea that you must look like the character that you're animating is another dumb idea. I just think there's got to be a pushback against. I don't know. Look, I just think the industry is going to become less and less relevant. It's going to contract and shrink. When you look at the box office for Wish, didn't even crack 100 mil. I don't know what the current box office is. Maybe look that up. We should look it up. But I just think that audiences are going to reject it. I think ultimately this. Do you want progress or revenge? I actually want progress.
Mhm.
I want other stories. And you look at other stories. I think, was it you that tweeted out, Alan? It was like a montage of Disney princesses.
Yeah.
And none of them were white. And they all were like from like more than 10 years ago.
Yeah. And they were all successes.
And they were all successes. Exactly. But it's like, they have a lot of characters that aren't white. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'll say in regard to the current topic at hand is I think the impression I'm getting is that the executives are getting kind of tired of all this. Yeah. Now I'm digging and I'm trying to hopefully get enough to where I could actually speak with some kind of authority without guessing. But the impression is that this is, they're not blind to this. They know it's a problem. They just they're either right now have been so beaten and battered, or two, something's going to happen. And I'm afraid when it comes to the animation industry, the ramifications of this and the decisions the executives are going to make is going to fundamentally change the animation industry.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you pretty much know the direction they're going to go in. It'll be overseas and AI.